companies like Apple are investing heavily in AI. The CEO of Anthropic is warning of its growing dangers. Dario Amodei wrote a new essay this week where he described how powerful AI could wreak havoc on society. Job losses, just the beginning. He said people should imagine AI as a literal country of geniuses, smarter than any Nobel laureate or statesman. And even if it still obeys people's orders, it could be misused by terrorists or would-be dictators. Marietje Schaake is a fellow at Stanford University's Institute on Human-Centered AI. She was previously a member of the European Parliament, and she joins us now. Grateful to have you here as we continue to try and parse all these developments on AI. And I do want to talk about the threat that he outlines. Just to quote him, he says, taking time to carefully build AI systems so they do not autonomously threaten humanity, emphasis on that word, is in genuine tension with the need for democratic nations to stay ahead of authoritarian nations and not be subjugated by them. My goodness, talk about dystopian. Is this framing credible, that democracies must win the AI race? Because if not, autocracies will take over?
Well, it's a very popular race frame that we hear a lot in the United States. I mean, lots of companies, the Trump administration are really pushing this narrative that the US needs to not only win the race, but dominate the world with its AI. And unfortunately, a lot of us, including myself in Europe, are wondering how democratic the United States is. In general, we see a lot of very concerning developments, but specifically around AI. While Dario Amodei points out dangers and calls for regulation, essentially, redistribution through taxing, safety measures, mechanisms to make sure that society is not overwhelmed by the impact of AI that he foresees. Of course, the Trump administration has a deregulatory approach. So really says, let companies race between themselves, help us race others in the world. And I think that's actually a race to the bottom that's very, very dangerous.
And I do want to get to that because, as you rightfully point out, Amodei allows that, yes, we need regulation, we need the guardrails, but this is key for him. It's thus very important for regulations to be judicious, he says. They should seek to avoid collateral damage, be as simple as possible, and impose the least burden necessary to get the job done. I mean, to me, that really seems contradictory here because I don't know how you get to that point. How do you get to that point, do you believe?
Well, I think it's important that we have much more transparency into the companies and the capabilities in the public interest. I mean, we hear from him now as a CEO, and I think it's helpful that he states his position, that he is explicit about what he expects, what he's building, and what he wants to see in terms of public policy. But we have to, I guess, trust CEOs to reflect how they believe the technology will work, while we need much more academic, independent research about AI, much more transparency of the companies to facilitate that, and then to have a political discussion. Because what one CEO may call light touch agile regulation might be, endangering the vulnerable, might facilitate harms elsewhere. So it's important that different stakeholders, not only CEOs, but also civil society members, journalists, parliamentarians, labor unions, what have you, reflect on what AI means for them, and that public policy reflects these different interests that go beyond what companies need, what the billionaires would hope to gain in terms of revenue, but what all of us need in this rapidly evolving technological race that certainly does not only have upsides, also has proven downsides already. Forget about what it might mean in the future.
Right.
And so I hope that Dario Amodei and companies like Anthropic are going to actively push the Trump administration, the US Congress, to regulate in the public interest.
And I hear everything you're saying, but I don't think people are confident that they will have that agency anymore. And as you rightfully pointed out, governments aren't sure that they have any agency when they're up against the Trump administration before. The Trump administration is already worrying other countries and warning other countries that, look, you cannot have digital sovereignty. We will not allow it.
I know, and that's a real affront. It's actually a sort of confrontation through modern means. But I think we should also look to the American people and what they wish to see from the technologies that are rolled out in their communities, that are used by the police to profile people, to target undocumented immigrants so that ICE can go after them. If you want to travel to the United States as a tourist or as a business person, you're supposed to hand over your social media accounts that are then being vetted before access is being granted. So we really see an instrumentalizing of technology, including AI, in very political, very sensitive activities by the Trump administration that are certainly controversial in the US and around the world. And so it's really high time that people raise their voices about what they believe the proper place of technology is in our society. And of course, there are many ways in which we can use AI. It doesn't have to be the big generative AI platforms. It can also be applied AI from smaller companies that are not so resource intensive, with data centers upsetting people in communities through their resource use like water and electricity. There will be a lot of friction, social unrest, concern about the role that these tech companies are claiming without democratic guardrails, checks and balances. And to suggest that the United States is the democratic player in the global race is unfortunately not a correct assessment.
You've given us a lot to think about there, and we will continue to have you back as I said, those AI developments continue to come. And I feel sometimes like we're just trying to outrun a tsunami. Running may make us feel better. It doesn't necessarily help, though. I really appreciate your input. Thanks so much.